All right, let's get into this one. Let's have some fun with it. This should be a good one. Kriega Bundalo. Welcome back to the channel, everybody. Welcome to the library. And I'm coming to you today because we are doing another obscure Marvel miniseries review. Now, this is an interesting one, and I tell you, it's one that just leaves you going, huh? At a lot of different points. And there's going to be a different structure in this review because, well, I think it deserves it. So, you guys already clicked on the thumbnail back there. That's what brought you to here. And it's interesting, like, as the time I'm talking about this right now, the thumbnail hasn't been created yet, but I'm talking about it in the past tense because it's already happened for you. So does that technically make me a time traveler? I think it does. Yeah, it sounds like that. Tennessee Fats. Time travel. Okay. The Scarlet Sword. This is an interesting miniseries. Came out in 1998. Came out after the Lord of the Spiders series. But it has some really weird twists and turns in it. So what we're going to do today is we're going to do this in 3 different chapters for our review. The first one, we're going to do a review of what actually happened in the story. Like, I'm going to walk you through, guys, of, well, here's the overall tale, and this is what brings us to the end. And there's a reason why I'm doing that, because this thing was really complex. It seems simple, but very complex. Then we'll get into the writing, and then we'll get into the art, and then we'll get to the bajillion-dollar question of Tennessee Fats, should I buy this or shouldn't I? Because, well, that's really why we get to these reviews at the end of the videos. So, spoiler alert now, there are chapters in this. If you want to skip the next chapter, which is the one where I'm going to walk through what happens in the story, then you're going to have to start skipping soon because, you know, if you're still watching, this is on you, it's not on me. Let's get into the books. All right, let's get into the story part of this because this is a thing. Okay. All right. We're going to do this in 2 parts here. First thing we're going to do is I'm going to talk to you about the opening of this and how the story opens. Then we're going to do a break for some context. Okay. Where is the world that this lives in? And then we're going to continue along with the story. Is that fair? I think that's pretty fair. That's what we're going to go with here. Okay. So story, let's just jump right in. We're diving into it. Here's where it hops off. Okay. You got a lord. He's hanging out with his family who are fairly foppish. And they're hanging out underneath a tent at an archaeological dig site because he's convinced he's an archaeologist. And he's there looking for the Scarlet Sword. Now, we know it's the Scarlet Sword. Obviously, the Scarlet Sword. I mean, that's what the whole story. He's looking for the Scarlet Sword. And he's telling his children this tale of Thun'da. Now, Thun'da is a hell of a name. And honestly, 2 points to Marvel for putting that one together. That is, I like it. Thun'da is out there, and he's telling the story about how he is the chief warrior of the Acheronian Empire. And when Acheron was fighting against Stygia, that he was the guy out there with his mythical Scarlet Sword, just cleaving down the armies of the Stygians, and doing a great job about it, by the way, until he was finally taken down by just sheer overwhelming numbers. And he tells them, and he says, guys, here's the trick with this sword. It gives him incredible power. And on top of that, when he nicks somebody, he can then follow them wherever they go. Think about that. This is like a homing pigeon ability you now have to a moving target. So you're out in the field of battle, you're wheeling your thing away, and you've got super crazy powers. You're cutting through swords and armor like crazy. And you nick somebody, and they go tearing off to their home encampment. Well, now you know where their home encampment is. You just take the sword out like this. This is me just picturing it. Honestly, in the comic, they picture it as just the guy seems to know where everything is. I think it'd be more fun if he held the sword out like this, and it went... And then he went just taking off, going like that. I think would be fantastic. I don't know if they actually thought about that in the comic, but you know, if anybody was to make this into a movie, you need to do something like that because that'd just be funny. Anyways, he's telling him about this, and then one of the workers in the dig falls into a cavern, and everybody gets excited and there's commotion, and there's a yell. Well, the reason why is because guess what? They just found the sword, and it isn't just sitting in the ground, like lying, like you know, level with the ground, like you know, in the strata of the ground. Like, what would they call that? They would call that in situ? Yes, they would call it in situ. How? It's not that. No. For some reason, it being in situ is that it is sticking straight up in the air like this. And it's also in a cavern, apparently, which is full of air. So when the ground falls away, this poor worker falls on it and impales himself and he dies. And that is how the Scarlet Sword comes back into the real world. Now, at this point in time, I think we should take a moment and we should talk about a couple things. First, let's talk about where do we think this is? Let's get into that, and then we'll get into the when this is. And the when has 2 different angles to it, so we're going to talk about both of those. Okay? Where? Let's talk context. Context break. Let's get into it. All right, let's talk context. So we already talked about and dropped that nasty word of Acheron back there. Now we know Acheron. Okay, we've run into Acheron a couple times in this channel. Yeah, actually a couple. I'm going to put a link up over here to the video that we did on the Hour of the Dragon, which had Acheron in it. We talked a fair amount in that. And then maybe afterwards, I'll put another link up, maybe also over there, about the Conan the Barbarian movie comic adaptation review that we did, because there's a lot of Acheron in there, and actually that one does a really good job as a piece of resource material, because I actually went back to that one to prepare for this video. We're going to get back to the overall context here of what's going on in a second, but let's talk about where we think this takes place, because the story actually does not tell us where this takes place. We know that in Lord of the Spiders, they were in Zamora. That's where that whole schlemazel occurred here. Now, the tricky part here is we've got to sort of go backwards a little bit and try to figure this out. Now, we've seen maps that have come out from Marvel before that show Acheron. They show massive territory, a huge area, because Acheron, as it was this giant area to the north with Stygia down in the south. I believe Python, being their capital, was somewhere in thereabouts. I don't really know because I haven't seen a map telling me exactly where Python is. But here's where we think we're at here. We're in Zamora where this whole Lord of the Spiders thing happened. And then there's a dig going on at the beginning of this story. I believe, could be wrong here, that we're somewhere down in Koth or we're somewhere over here in Zamora. Both of these areas were part of Acheron originally. And although it doesn't really give us an exact place, I'm willing to bet we're somewhere here. I get a sense that we're somewhere in the Kothian area, but it could still be somewhere in Zamora as well, because as we know, all we know is they were digging at the beginning of this story to try to find this blasted sword. Somewhere around there? Probably likely. All right, back to the actual story wrap up. All right, so there's your context. You seem to have a sense of where this is. And you know, it's not really that important to know where it is. Well, to me, it's kind of important. It's important because it sets to me, all right, we're kind of out in the burbs, which means, all right, I now know that if anything happens, you got big distances between spaces to get around. Like if you want to find help, you got to go far. So you now know you're sort of on your own out there. All right, I got that. Okay, good. Now let's talk about the when. Well, this whole Acheron thing happened 3,000 years before the time of Conan. So we know we're in the Hyborian Age, and we know that's 3,000 years ago because he clearly says in a second in the panel that it was 3,000 years ago. Okay, but we got that. Okay, so fine. Where is this in the world of Conan's life? How does this relate to Conan's overall adventure, and what was he doing at this point in time? Well, I'll tell you what he was doing. He was just finishing that whole schlemazel of the Lord of the Spiders. Now, I'm going to put a link up here because we did a review on that one. If anybody wants to check it out, just click on that and go back and check it out. The Lord of the Spiders was the continuation of the Elsberg de Camp story, Conan the Spider God. Now, I have not read the Conan the Spider God novel yet. I believe I have read. Did I read? I did read the actual Savage Sword adaptation of that. And I think that was in issues 207 through 210. Don't hold me to that. I think it's somewhere around there, though. The Lord of the Spiders comes after that. 207 and 210 of Savage Sword is the whole thing that happens where you get the whole, well, you get a mage, okay? Mage at the end of that whole thing gets his memory wiped, but in the Lord of the Spiders, he gets his memory back, okay? Fine. And he goes and he hires this lady named Heliana to go and entrap Conan and bring him back. And at the end of the day, she turns on the mage and actually helps out Conan after Conan is injected with a hypodermic needle, which is fascinating in the Hyborian Age as to where they got a hypodermic needle. I'm just so curious about that. Anyway, moot point, and he gets ragingly mad on all sorts of crazy level of drugs and just goes nuts. At the end of the day, he gets solved, it's fixed, and everything's fine. And a giant conflagration burns everything down, and everybody dies. And then Conan, I guess, just wanders off. That's how the story ends. In this story, Conan has wandered into a peaceful place now. And his only comment on this is that he just wants to be as far away from his city in Zamora as possible. And, Zamora being a country, and he just wants to stay away from spiders. That's all he said here. So you have a sense that he clearly remembers the spider thing happened. Now, is this like a continuation of that story? Not really. I mean, all you need to know is that he just finished the spider adventure. And there is one other aspect that will come up shortly thereafter, but for now, that's what we need to know, okay? So, Lord Guy, let's get back to him, shall we? Guy is impaled, he's down here. Lord Guy goes down and gets the sword, and then just goes nuts. Because guess what? He's now taken over by Thun'da. That whole imbibing of the sword with the blood of the slave guy woke it up. Thun'da is now full power, taken over that guy. It recognizes it's in a host body. its family is, or sorry, host body's family is sitting right in front of him. And Thun'da just goes nuts, completely nuts. He recognizes somehow that 3,000 years has passed. Probably because he somehow inherited the memories of his host body. I don't know. But also recognizes that these people aren't his family. His family died 3,000 years ago. Okay, valid point. But also says, I'm going to kill every Stygian out there. And now he starts his slaughter fest. He's decided that everybody around him is a Stygian. Yeah, and he's going to make his own empire now, the new Acheron, where he's the leader. And he's going to do that by killing absolutely everybody. Now, this is one of those logic things that doesn't make sense to me. He's talking about literally cutting off the hand to save the finger. Now, you can't kill everybody and then have a country to run because there's nobody in the country to run it. A little bit weird, a little strange on how I was thinking here. I'm going to chalk this up to 3,000-year-old ghost brain not thinking clearly. But we then segue off to Conan, because we now know Thun'da is just going to go off and slaughter everybody. Okay, well, now let's segue. Let's bring Conan into the story. Conan is peacefully living his life. He's wandered into a village, and although he knows he could take everything he wants because he's Conan, sure, he can. I get it, but he doesn't because he's Conan. He's a good dude, and he's working for a living. He's working for his food. He just wants to stay away from big cities and spiders. And the daughter of the Lord comes wandering in. And this is when you know the poop is about to hit the fan. Daughter of the Lord has wandered in. She's got a cut on her arm. She then starts to tell the story about Thun'da. Now her father has now become Thun'da. And Conan's like, well, that's not good. What sort of guy would slaughter his own family? And lo and behold, at that moment, who arrives but the entire army and Thun'da. And this is where things get a little wacky, okay? Because it just turns into a giant 3-issue slaughter fest from here on in. If you want story... Okay, all right, here's the pieces of story that happen. During the slaughterfest that occurs right off the bat in this village that Conan was just hanging out and minding his own business, right? That's really what he's doing here. It's going to poop, all right? The guy who's Thun'da with his Scarlet sword comes out and he's withered away to nothing at this point in time. And he just starts cleaving at Conan, and Conan gets in the way and he's trying to defend himself. But at the same time, he's holding back a little bit because, the guy's daughter is literally in the hut right behind him. And he's like, I probably shouldn't kill your dad in front of you because, that's kind of a dick move. And guy goes to take his crazy sword for a swing. Daughter jumps in the way, gets impaled, dies. And then Conan's like, well, if you killed your daughter, I got nothing to hold back. So it takes literally what's left of his sword because the Scarlet sword broke it and just stabs him in the brain. And he just dropped dead. And that's the end of that particular iteration of Thun'da. This is interesting because at this point in time, there's a little twist in the writing where Conan's looking at the sword and he's like, I guess we should get that sword out of here. And in the meantime, he did just reference that when the girl died, the daughter, that she warned him about a curse, but she didn't manage to get it out. She died. And it was like, I wonder if I should touch that sword. And just as he's about to do that, one of the lieutenants for the first Thun'da, I'm going to call him the first Thun'da, pops up, grabs the sword. And he's like, no, I've got the sword now. And we've got all this army sitting over here that are working for us. So what we're going to do is, and he's literally in the middle of his whole tirade about talking about how he's going to take control, and Thun'da possesses him. His hair goes completely white, and he goes nuts. Conan's thinking, this is a bad situation here. I don't know how I'm supposed to solve this. This is not going well. And suddenly, and this is where we have an interesting twist, and this is why the context of this happening right after the Lord of the Spiders series is so important. Helliana comes in out of nowhere. Yeah, remember that thief that, that mage hired to bring in Conan and then turned on the mage, but then died in a giant fiery conflagration? She's alive. And how does she get Thun'da, or we'll call Thun'da 2, to stay back? Well, she sets fire to everything. And she says, we should get out of here. And Conan's like, why are you alive? And she's like, do you really want me to answer that question? Do you want to leave? And they leave. And that's basically the end of the issue. We don't really get into how she survived the whole spider schlemazel. I don't know. I guess it's not important for the overall story here. But they leave. And basically, the rest of the story is they wander off, go off to a fort. In that fort, there's a giant statue with a whole bunch of arms that's designed to protect the people in their hour of need. And it was set up by a mage thousands of years ago. Hint, hint, that's foreshadowing. Thousands of years ago. And it's never done anything since. Conan and Helliana come riding in and they say, geez, we got the Lord Thun'da coming after us. And everybody in the fort's like, oh crap, that guy's bad news and he's going to kill all of us. You shouldn't have come here. And Conan, being the stand-up guy that he is like, you know what? Y'all are right. I shouldn't have come here. And since he's after me because he nicked me and that whole battle back there, I'm going to ride out and lead them away. And then you guys will be safe. And this is where things don't go exactly as Conan had planned, because it never does work out that way. Because if it did, then there really wouldn't be a point to the story. Conan goes tearing off in the wilderness, and Thun'da and his troops are coming along. And Thun'da 2, by the way, Thun'da 2 says to his troops, okay, listen, troops, here's what we're going to do. The guy I want to kill, he's over there. I'm going to go murder him, because, my sort of, like, I'm going to go over there and kill him. Here's what you guys are going to do. You're going to go over to that fort over there, and you're going to kill that. Now, this is an interesting point, and it really speaks to the fact that Thun'da is completely effing nuts. And he really is trying to create an empire by killing everybody in the empire, which just, again, kind of odd. Thun'da wanders off, goes and fights Conan. Guess what? Thun'da don't make it. In fact, Thun'da actually gets separated from his sword, and Conan is about to literally kill him with his bare hands, and suddenly the cadaver, the husk that was Thun'da, just withers away to the point where it looks like a 6-month-old corpse. And at this point in time, Conan has killed him, and this is where he suddenly becomes aware of the curse, because he's now being drawn to the sword, which, by the way, was stuck in a rock. And he's like, ooh, do I grab the sword? Do I grab the sword? No, I don't grab the sword. Do I grab the sword? Do I grab the sword? And of course, he grabs the sword. And he grabs the sword, and he's basically cut scenes, turns into Thun'da the Third. That's right, Thun'da the Third. But now, it's a Conan the Barbarian Thun'da. Conan the Barbarian Thun'da is now storming Norman back over to the fort, riding along on his horse at full speed, and the people in the fort are saying, hey, look, it's Conan, and this is all good because, he's coming back to help us because, his army is sitting out, Thunda's army is sitting out here. What do we do? And then they look and they're like, oh, crap, Conan is the new Thun'da. This isn't going to go well. It doesn't go well. Conan as Thun'da slashes open the door to the fort, goes inside, slaughters pretty much everybody. And there are some particularly graphic ones in here where it infers that Thun'da / Conan actually slaughters a child. Now that's dark. That's dark for Marvel. I'm gonna give you that one, Marvel. That's dark, and I don't know if it's dark for the purpose of being dark, or if it was actually something that needed to be thrown in the story. Anyways, the whole fort is destroyed. Very few survivors. Helena has been kabonked unconscious somehow by the Scarlet Sword, because Conan didn't kill her, just kabonked her unconscious. That's strange. And wakes up later with some of the actual survivors. And the survivors are saying, well, it'd be really great if that giant statue that was ensorcelled thousands of years ago can come back and help us in our hour of need. But, nobody believes in it anymore. And then Helena goes and dances before it and just pretends she or believes. I don't know. Somehow her dance and her belief in the statue brings the statue to life. And at this point in time, Conan / Thun'da the Third is coming out of his tent and recognizes, oh, crap, I know that giant thing. This is bad. Kill her right now before she finishes, but it's too late because it wakes up. And statue thing, which was supposed to help them in their hour of need, guess what? Is now helping them in their hour of need because it's been specifically designed to fight the very Scarlet Sword that just slaughtered the fort. So where was it during the slaughter? I don't know. I'm guessing it's because nobody believed in it. But Helena doing her dance did believe in it. Statue comes back to life. Conan / Thun'da the Third fights statue, throws sword in statue's head. Somehow that turns statue into a living person with 4 arms that is also the wielder of the sword, but is still convinced that everybody's a Stygian and is also convinced that it's Thun'da and decides it wants to kill everybody. And it battles Conan. Conan knows it's a losing fight because it has 4 arms and he has 2. And then the statue impales itself on the sword to end it because, whoever kills it then becomes the new Thun'da, but by impaling himself, now it's not going to be the new Thun'da. So somehow the ensorceling of the statue and the ensorceling of the sword counterbalance one another, and then they just turn into some rubble on the ground. Then Helena and Conan ride off. Yeah. That is a really complex, rambling story. Like, really. And you guys think this is me rambling because I'm rambling? No, this is me giving you as short of a synopsis to this weird story that's going through this odd path as possible. Wild. All right, let's get into the writing. All right, it's writing time. Now, this story, you heard the whole, well, if you stuck around for that chapter, you heard the whole meandering. This is the story. It was a long and weird one that had all these twisting paths to it and new information that came out steadily about what this Scarlet Sword does and what it doesn't do. It was just, it was odd. Let's just put it that way. This is a Roy Thomas story. Now, you guys have heard us talk about this enough times on the channel, and we talk about Roy Thomas. Roy Thomas knows Conan. Roy Thomas knows Robert E. Howard's works. Roy Thomas knows a lot about this stuff, and I give Roy Thomas a lot of cred. He really knows his stuff. Now, here's how we can tell and we can see the Thomas-esque like features within this story. You have an Acheron reference in here. You have Acheron, you have a Python, which is the name of the capital of Acheron. You have it battling Stygia. You have a lot of Howardian lore thrown in here. You do, you see that in here. The other thing that you see in here that you know this is a Thomas-esque type story is right at the beginning. Remember when I talked about that Lord guy? There was very little dialogue between that Lord guy and his family, but it was enough because Roy Thomas is really good at telling you a story with as little word as possible. Within that small vignette, you got a clear sense that his family were just deadbeats. The Lord's family, they were just useless individuals. The wife clearly had come up with a lap of luxury and never worked a day in her life. The daughter, who was the one who was listening, that was actually interested, did have some potential. And that's probably why she made it as far as she did in the story. But the son was just a twit. It's just one of these things where you can really read into what Roy was telling you about that family in a very short order, just by the way he's writing. And there's another snippet here where you also get a real sense of Roy Thomas-like lore, which is how the sword and the statue, at the end of the day, end one another. Now, Roy was really good at this one because what he did was he said, okay, listen, the statue, was ensorcelled thousands of years ago. That scarecrow was out there early. You saw it early. And if you were watching it, you were thinking, I wonder where that's going to come through. When is this going to become a thing? And it did. And it was quite interesting that you see that Howardian sort of ending where you have magic fighting magic. And at the end of the day, the human flesh and blood Conan is just sitting in the sidelines watching because he can only do so much. You got to recognize he's still just Conan. He's not larger than life. He's just Conan, okay? Roy Thomas knows that. But what happened with the rest of this? This story was very strange. It led in this weird roundabout way to get to the end there because he had all these moving parts. And I think a piece of this has to do with the fact that I think this story was rammed into too short of a sequence. Let's just call it that. What you saw here was a whole lot of moving parts rammed into 3 issues. Now, you could simplify this by taking out a lot of the moving parts. You could take out major components, like you could take out the family of the Lord. That doesn't need to be there. You can take out Conan hanging out with the villagers. That doesn't need to be there. This whole thing with the villagers and how they've lost faith in this giant statue that is their deity that they worship, and how there's one guy in town that's a priest that does worship this, and even he loses faith. You can take all that out. It doesn't need to be there. But because you've got all these different layers that Roy Thomas typically includes in a story, it led to this 3-issue ram-packed, well, basically just a jam fest of sword and sorcery material that's all rammed into too small of an area. So you end up with a story that takes me literally 11 minutes to walk through because there's so many moving parts to it. And in 3 issues, it's too much. It really is too much. And that's why you get this sense of this meandering, wandering over hill and through dale to get to the end of the story. It's good writing. But I think the problem here is in the execution. Could this have been done in a larger scope? I think it could have. And if it was in a larger scope, would we have gotten more of the story of Thun'da in the background? Would you have learned more about that sword? Would you have learned more about the sorcerer who ensorcelled that statue in the first place? And why that statue back then never ran into the Scarlet Sword? Because if it did, the Scarlet Sword wouldn't have been there now. Like all these different pieces of stories could have led to a major story arc that could have gone through 10, 12 issues of Savage Sword, maybe 15, who knows? I don't write this stuff. But 3 issues of a comic book, it was just too little and packed too tight. All right, that's my writing right up here. That's how we think about this. Let's get into the actual art. All right, let's talk about the art in this one because it is particularly important that we hit this point now. And I'm going to start this off with a very simple sentence, and I'm going to keep this art part really quick, okay? Here's the thing. This one left me whelmed. I didn't say overwhelmed. I didn't say underwhelmed. I said whelmed. This left me exactly in the middle of the road. The art in this was by Stefano Raphael and Ralph Cabrera. There, I got the names right. It took me a minute there. I got it, okay. And the art style in this is such that it's really what you would just expect for this time period and for this character. And I'm going to be showing images of the cover art on either side here as we go along, and I'll also do some splash pages in here. Really, the layout and the way the artists worked their way through this was well done. And I'm not arguing about that at all. Really, you had the use of the pages fully. There were very few pages out of the white border even, because they literally took the art right to the edge. When they didn't take it to the edge, they chose color patterns that filled it in, that set the tone. Oh, this is a dark period in the story. I got it. Oh, this is a light period in the story. I got it. You really get a sense of that. And they had massive splash pages throughout this, which I thought was really, really well done. What I don't get a sense of, though, is really what this artist and this art team's art style is. And what I mean by that is, when I look at Conan series, and when I look at comics that came out from the 90s, this genre, and I'm going to say this and it's somewhat stereotypical, had an art style that was associated with it, okay? When you look at Jeff Isherwood's work in Conan the Barbarian, you really have a picture that's Conan the Barbarian from the 1990s. I understand that, I get it. When you look at Conan the Barbarian from the 1980s, you go, okay, that's a Steve Buscema work, that's an Ernie Chan work, you get it, you understand that. Steve Buscema? Yeah, Steve Buscema, I got that right. In this one, it's still along that art style, but it's not an art style that's in and of its own. And it's interesting, because the art style in here is actually somewhere between where I would see a Jeff Isherwood and a Bart Sears. Now, for those of you who don't know, Bart Sears did phenomenal work throughout the 1990s. And if any of you are interested in picking up any of the Exo Manowar series, where he did cover art and interior art on that, or Turok the Dinosaur Hunter, also very well done. And Turok the Dinosaur Hunter is probably where you're going to see that art style as it matches the genre, which is close to the sword and sorcery, because really he's out hunting dinosaurs, which is kind of pretty close. Now, granted, they're techno dinosaurs that talk a lot and hiss, but you get where I'm going with this. This art style is somewhere in the middle. It's a mishmash of those, and it's good, and it matches the character, and it matches the story, and it matches the genre, and it matches the time period. But I don't see anything in this that's screaming at me saying, holy poop, this is phenomenal art. Is it good? Yes, by all means, I think it's good. Is it fantastic? Well, I wouldn't go that far necessarily. Is it terrible? Absolutely not. I think this perfectly conveys the message. It just leaves me with a whelmed feeling. Now, I know that's kind of hard to quantify, but that's as close as I'm going to get to it. All right, it's bajillion-dollar question time. Tennessee Fats. Yeah, that's me. Should I buy this? Well, this is the fun part. And we always do this part without any notes. I don't have any written notes on this part here, because I always want to make sure that I'm doing this in one take and then it's legit. And it's coming straight from the heart. So here's where I'm at on this thing. Should you buy it? Well, that's a hard part. So again, I'm going to take the approach that I take on these things often. If you're a Conan completionist, i.e. you want to have every Conan comic out there, yes, by all means, you definitely need to buy this, okay? If you're somebody that's picking up Conan because you like the art, the genre, and you like the art style, and you like everything that happens around this point in time, and you like these Marvel doldrum years, as I continuously refer to them as, well, yeah, you'd probably enjoy this. My only issue with this, and I think you catch the tone here when we went through the story synopsis, that first chapter, and then we get into the writing part of this one. This story was really too much. This story was just way too much going on for me. There was too many moving parts, and it was rammed into too short of a time period. And as a result of that, you had all these layers that were sitting underneath. But these weren't layers that were just being left with, a little string sticking out. These were layers that were being referenced and then just being dropped completely, which left you as the reader going, well, if I didn't know this whole Acheron thing, I'd be somewhat lost on that. Well, hold on. Why is he talking about spiders here? Why does he not want to hang around with spiders? What is this reference to Helliana? What do you mean she's dead? Like, all these things were wonderful little tie-ins to other pieces of the lore, both within the comics and within Robert E. Howard's original work. But it was done in such a way that it left you really somewhat buried in the material. And it left you buried in the material to the point where the story felt wandering. It literally felt like you were wandering along the garden path. Eventually, you're going to get to that gate and get out of the garden on the other side, but you had to do the long, meandering wander to get there. And it wasn't one where the art was enough to make it go, okay, boom, I need to buy this because, this has fantastic art in it. And I'm willing to, give it a mulligan on the meandering of the story because the art's going to take me there, because the art doesn't take you there. The art is good, but it's not enough for me to say, okay, I'm going to stay invested in this. I'm going to continue to follow through on this. So you probably don't need to go out and hunt this down, particularly given the hard times you have finding these Conan Marvel obscure series out in the wild. They're incredibly difficult to find. And I was thinking about this. Again, I'm referencing this ridiculous long train ride I took to Montreal the other day. And during that, I had a lot of time to mull, and I had a lot of to think. And the little OCD me in the back of my head does a lot of this mulling stuff when things just don't really make sense to me. Constantly throwing darts at the wall, hoping something will hit the target and go, oh, that's the... So the dart that was on this one, hey, you know, Titan has the license out there for Conan right now, right? So why doesn't Titan do an omnibus that just has all of these individual short-lived miniseries in it? Yeah, that's what came to me in a moment of just obscure staring off the train and drinking my cup of coffee. Why doesn't Titan do that? Now, I know Titan is working its way through the whole process of getting the Savage Sword done, the original Conan the Barbarian done, and I know they're doing their best here. Now, I'm not going to give them grief on this because I do understand what the holdup is. I've been told, I get it, and I understand the need here, and I support their decision here. I would like to see an omnibus done next and sometime in the near future that actually contains these miniseries in them. Like, I've been out here pulling these things out and showing them to you guys because I've been hunting them down and I think they're important to share because I know they're hard to find. But what if you could all just have them in one omnibus? That'd be pretty freaking awesome. So, Titan, I'm just serving that up for you here, just suggesting, just saying. All right, let's wrap this bad boy up. Okay, this was an interesting one, guys, and I got to tell you, as I think you can tell from the long meandering discussion of what actually happened this way. Wait, I'm still meandering. This is me meandering on over this way. This thing really went the distance, and it took me a while to read this one. Well, the first time, and then I had to read it a second time, and then I had to put it down and take a weekend vacation in Montreal just to think about this thing, and then come back going, huh, that's what happened here. It was really one where, unfortunately, it just got shrunk down way too much. And as a result, it just left you with this strange feeling and a strange taste in your mouth. It's like, well, do I like this or I don't like this? It's really hard to nail down. And it takes time to think about it. And that's why this video I thought was kind of important because, well, if anybody else picked this up, they might just race through it and go, oh, it was terrible, but not actually give it the due it actually deserves. In that it does actually have good content. It was just executed in too short of a manner. It's a weird one. Everybody, that's our video for this week. I hope you enjoyed it, and we'll see you in the next one. that is why persistence is key. You know, it's funny. You watch that Ray Kroc, the founder, that's what it's called, that Ray Kroc movie, and he says to yourself, persistence. That's what makes a couple of good old Illinois boys like us make it. And that was, it was somewhat of a weird takeaway in that movie. I tell you, it just seemed odd. Now, I know many of you are saying to yourselves, Tennessee fans, what the hell are you talking about? Literally, this is the little Easter egg thing that you stick at the end of the video sometimes. And for those of you who've never been in one of these little outro things that we stick at the end of the videos, welcome to them. I stick them in every once in a while. If you stuck around all the way to get to here, that's great. Typically what we do here is we just talk a little bit. And this is going to be an interesting one because this is actually the second take at this one. I shot this one actually early this afternoon, and I decided what I would do is I would do this massive mail opening thing. Because I don't often buy books online. I really don't. I want to see the books in my hands before I purchase them. But lately, this little thing called the Feebay has really caught my attention because I found this funny little button in it that says Canada only. And when you search in there sometimes, you find some good stuff. So I did, and I did find some good stuff. So I had some stuff at the house, and I said, let's do this giant opening. And I was shooting the opening, and I was watching the video back, and I gotta tell you, there was nothing in there but just negativity the whole way. I was just being a negative Nelly the whole way through this whole thing. I was talking about, you know, Franco-Anglo relations in Quebec in the 1970s, and, you know, how that led to the massive migration out from the Anglos. It was just, listen, it was a long discussion, and at the end of the day, I don't think there's any value to you guys whatsoever. And the whole mail opening turned into the giant schlemazel of me babbling about this negativity, which I think really reflected on just the piss poor day I had today. It was just pissy. So I sat back and I watched it, and I said, well, that was kind of negative. And then my daughter says, Dad, we got to go driving because I need some highway exposure because I'm just not driving enough on the highway. She's a newer driver. And I said, you know what? Begrudgingly, because I'm grumbling the whole way going through this, because of course I'm a 50-year-old grumpy man and it's my job to be this. I said, let's go. So I went off and you know, it was a good 20-minute drive, just hit out the driveway, head to the highway, zip along. And you're watching all these other dingbats just fly around you. And it's not because she was going slow at all. She was actually doing the flow of traffic. But if you drive in the GTA, and I don't mean that GTA car racy violence game, I mean the greater Toronto area like I do, the majority of the drivers out there are utter crap. So the result is you have these very aggressive drivers flipping around. All they're doing is flying around me, and all I'm thinking to myself is, you know, you're flying past me here as I'm just sitting in the car with my daughter, yutzing along. She's having a good time. She's talking to me. I'm thinking, all you're doing is racing your way along to an early grave. Go for it, guys. Have a great time. But it just gives you that moment of reflection where you step back and say, you know, the negativity, all this crap I went through today, this is all just first world noise. It's just meaningless. Does it mean anything in the grand scheme of things? Absolutely not. In fact, most of the stuff we talk about on the channel here actually doesn't mean anything in the grand scheme of things. It's just one of those fun things we do as an aside. And that's, I guess, to the point where you want to say, you just got to take things less seriously. And at the same time, the other point that comes out of that, which was really coming back to that Founder movie I watched, and it's a negative lesson that comes out of it, but it's also a positive lesson, is the persistence thing, you know? Just because I shot a crappy video earlier this afternoon doesn't mean to just give up on it. You wanted to share some things, Tennessee Fats, let's share these things. So I went through the actual things that I had in the mailing. That, by the way, is a 4-minute rambling intro to get to the stuff I want to show you today. Holy crap, I'm old. Wow. That's actually, I think, a personal record for me. Well done. Anyways, let's get to the good stuff we want to talk about today. It did come in the mail. I wanted to share some of these things with you because these are kind of cool. And for you Cananophiles, and you guys who are into the sword and sorcery, and if you're watching this channel, you probably are, you're going to get 3 of the 4 of these. The 4th one, you're going to go, what the hell? Okay, let's talk about the first one, okay? The first one here is kind of a cool one. I tell you, I was online chatting with the guys the other day, and one of them, Jason, said to me, hey, you know, you should check out this because I found this really cool cover. And I went to, and we were looking on the Feebay. And this is what brought us to the Feebay in the first place. And Jason, this is probably entirely your fault. I know at the time you said, this is not my fault, I didn't do it. Probably entirely, but it was your fault in a good way. Because I tell you, you found a really cool cover, and it is a cool cover. I agree with you. The one you want, definitely hold out and make sure you can get that one in a 9.8. But there's another cover that I really like here. And this one is a really good one because, for those of you who don't know, the whole Conan and Bellet story to me is the pivotal Conan story. This is a story to me that defines the character. And this cover was on issue number 7. But I didn't know there was a virgin variant of it. Here, let's do this. We're going to try to fight the glare here because we're shooting at night because we're coming back to this video. And I tell you, that's the one. Now, this is issue 7. And there was a standard cover that you could get. But this is this fancy, basically, virgin variant one. So all the trade dress was up here in the sale that said Conan the Barbarian. And it's not there anymore. And it's funny, when I saw this picture online, I was like, you know, that looks really cool with that giant arcing sail taking up that giant piece of the image. And it does really look cool. Kind of neat. Quite happy with that one. And this one, ridiculously cheap. I'm telling you, Phoebe Canada, as far as the buyers go, and I know they call it Phoebe because I know there's crazy fees that you vendors actually have to pay for these things. But that's actually a really reasonable price for that. And with the Canadian shipping inside Canada, without any of that duty crap and any of this expedited garbage, it actually comes out relatively cheap for a book that you didn't think you'd find. But this one was a big, exciting one for me, I'll tell you. And this is issue number, I believe it's issue number 9. It is issue number 9, yes. And this is a wraparound cover. And for some reason, on my pull, I didn't even get this as an option, which is strange because typically I do get all of the covers as an option, unless it's some sort of crazy, you know, like that virgin variant one over there. And then I got to go try to find it elsewhere. But this is one that really speaks to me. You guys know I'm all about the maps. Where are these things happening? I have to visualize the world that the story occurs in for me to get it. Clearly evident by the fact we've got the Hyborian Age map over here. We're still working on those posters that are going to go on either side, but we'll get there. And that'll be another video. We might share how actually we make that. But this one is one that I am particularly excited about. And it's unfortunate when it was shipped, it wasn't shipped with a clear backer board. It's the Thurian Age variant. So what you've got there is the map of the Thurian Age. In a style pretty similar to this. And pretty similar to the earlier maps that Titan put out. And I gotta tell you, Titan, if you've got this thing out there, you own this, and you're gonna publish this, put it out as a full-size poster. I will have this up on the wall and mounted professionally, like this one, in very short order. Like that would be a good thing, because I do not have enough really good maps of the Thurian Age. Marvel did some good stuff, don't get me wrong, but this, I'm looking forward to actually having the clear backer board on this. And maybe in a future video, I'll show you guys what it looks like when it's got a clear backer on the back and you can see it. Last piece of sword and sorcery that we're going to actually display here today. And this is kind of a cool one. It's not actually Robert E. Howard, but it's something I found about a month ago. And this is going to be my little secret. I'm sharing it with you guys, but I don't want you to tell anybody else about this. This is our sword and sorcery secret. Okay, if you're a subscriber, you got here all the way to the end. This is for us. Okay, about a month ago, I started reading this story called The Race to Opar. Now, Opar is going to ring a bell to some of you. I'm going to do a full video on this thing later, so we're just going to wet the whistle here a little bit on this, all right? So, Opar is this city that's actually part of Edgar Rice Burroughs' Tarzan lore. So you see how Conan and Tarzan sort of made another topic. We've already wasted 4 minutes on the ramble. We gotta stick to it, Tennessee fans. All right. That whole Opar thing is a Tarzan thing. Okay, and he runs into the priestess / queen of Opar a couple times in the stories, I believe, and I think her name was just La, L-A, I think. If I'm remembering that correctly, that is it. Well, what happened was, at some point in time, and I've only discovered this recently, some point in time in the 1970s, somebody, i.e. this guy over here, started writing a story about the prehistory of Tarzan and started to fill in the gaps. And that Race to Opar was the second part of a story arc that covers what happens 10,000 years before the time of Tarzan. Well, if you put your chronological thinking caps on here, guys, 10,000 years before the time of Tarzan, you're getting back into some pretty close to the Hyborian Age thing. And granted, this is not the Howard verse, okay? This is the Edgar Rice Burroughs verse that's being built onto a little bit with that Flight to Opar thing. But there's so much lore built into it. I think that actually deserves its own video. And some of the stuff in there did trigger me. And it triggered me with a Hyborian Age conspiracy theory. And in order to really get some answers on that, I had to go out and get this. All right, this is the first book of the Hadon of Ancient Opar. This is the first part of that story, and that's, I believe, Hadon depicted right there. That's who you're picking up right there. And I tell you, this was $7, like in Canada, and then I had to pay the shipping for it, of course. But you know, that was just a couple bucks. So this came in, and I'm particularly excited about that because I'm going to read this. We're going to do in a separate video, we're going to talk about, well, what are you reading Tennessee Fats? We're going to pull it out of the Tennessee Fats library. I'm going to walk through that book for you guys, and I'll head into the whole conspiracy theory idea that I think might actually apply here. It could be me grasping at straws, but honestly, if it fleshes out a little bit, I think it'd be a pretty cool thing, and I think you guys would appreciate it. Okay, last thing I wanted to share for you, and honestly, I'm not sharing, hold on, the rest of this giant stack with you, okay? That's, if you want to know what's in there, we'll talk about it later. Post a comment below. This is the big one that came out here. I'll tell you, some of you don't know this. Well, I'm a fan of a few things, okay? And I admit, I've got some very eclectic tastes. Like, I like Harvey Kurtzman stuff. And I think lately, I actually just finished the last piece I'm going to be able to get of Harvey Kurtzman material, because I'm never going to be able to find a cheap copy of the Humbug hard-cased set, which would be the last Kurtzman thing that I need in my collection to be done. But there are some other things that I also like. Obviously, I like Tarzan. I referenced that earlier. I do like my Sword and Sorcery. But another thing that I like, and this is one of these things that speaks to me in my early teen years, were the Valiant comics. I really did enjoy those. I enjoyed the old Rye. I enjoyed the Exo Man of War. You guys have seen me do the omnibus reviews on this channel, where I've talked through Exo, Ninjak, Shadow Man, Bloodshot. I'm still waiting to get my hands on a copy of the Archer and Armstrong. My hope is that Alien, with them purchasing the rights with them working through the rights to put these omnibus together, will actually reissue that, because I think I do have, hold on. Yeah, I've got the Eternal Warrior one over there on the shelf. That'll actually be in an upcoming review. We'll do that, but I want that Archer and Armstrong one because that's actually the story that speaks the most to me. The last piece that could possibly come out from Valiant as far as an omnibus goes, which would really sing for me, is Harbinger. The Harbinger story and the story of Sting and Torque and all the and Zephyr, those characters really spoke to me. It was an interesting team. Honestly, the loss of Torque was one of those issues where, I mean, forget the death of Superman, although that was particularly shattering for me. No, the death of Torque, oh my God, like as a teenage young Tennessee Fats, that pretty much destroyed me for a period of time. So it's interesting that I forgot this book existed until somebody that I post to and receive posts from on Instagram posted something that actually had this, and I went, oh my God, I immediately rectified that through Phoebe. Check it out. Now, you gotta have to forgive me here on the bag, okay? This is the Harbinger, Children of the Eighth Day trade paperback, but this is the blue Harbinger logo variant on the front. There's a black one, there's a blue one. I already have a couple copies of the black one. I completely forgot the blue one existed until I saw that posting, went mind blown. I was like, okay, I gotta fix this. I gotta go pick it up. And this copy was pretty cheap. And I'll tell you, the funny part about getting this copy pretty cheap was it's the bag that looks like crap. Like if you look closely, you'll see the bag actually has some old Reuben tape up here in the corner, which just looks horrible. It's badly hazed. The bag has not survived well with time. The back still has the Valiant issue number, Harbinger number 0. It's hard to do this with the glare because the bag's so crappy. Number 0. This is the purpley goldy cloud variant. This is not one that you would mail away with. This just came with the trade paperback. But both of these inside the bag are in very good condition. So these will be coming out of this crappy bag, and I'll be able to have my blue copy of this, of the Harbinger Children of the Eighth Day, in a nice bag and board and set up in the collection. And that makes me particularly happy. And it's funny, this is just one of those completionist things, because it's not like having this changes the story. I know the story that happened in this. I've already read this trade paperback repeatedly, both in individual issues and in the trade paperback format. But it's one of where, as an OCD sort of completionist about my Harbinger and my Valiant books, this was one that was sadly overdue. So I'm glad I corrected that. And those are the 4 key things that I wanted to share with you guys today. Those are some pretty cool finds. I gotta tell you, it's funny, this cover right here, where they're shooting at his Mustang. Every time I see this, all I do is scream, "Stop shooting my Mustang!" And it's one of those things, and it's not a line within the comic at all, but it's something I've always said since I first saw this as a teenager: "Stop shooting my Mustang," because you know what? They're late again. Just one of these classic images that just speaks to you. So funny. And Flamingo, and there he is right there, Twerk. So sad, so sad. Yeah. Anyways, there's our 4 books that I want to talk about today, and I apologize for the 4-minute ramble that got us into here. That was really one heck of an aside, but you know what? You never know what you're going to get in these little outros.